Welcome to Bonded Voices. This episode is a bit of a tough one. It's the suicide of Grayson Murray and men's mental health. You've probably seen in the news this weekend that Grayson Murray took his own life. A guy who wasn't a failure at the sport he did. He was actually doing very well. But it brings up a lot of deeper issues when it comes to men's mental health. So I'm Ian.
This is Loren.
And I'm Greg.
And welcome to Bonded Voices. So we started this because of people in our lives who've done the same thing. And I think we've mentioned on other episodes, I probably know, it's probably 7 people have committed suicide.
Yeah, I would have to say I know more than I would like to know.
Yeah, way more.
It's definitely not something you want to outdo somebody else's.
Yeah.
No, it's not a one-upmanship, right? And some of us know the same people. That's the thing. And you look at the statistics, and we'll cover that a little later in the show, but it's the 11th leading cause of death. And when you think about heart disease, cancer, all the other things, it's way up there. It includes in America about 50,000 people a year, mainly men, and mainly white men as well. And so it's something that I think has to be talked about. Talked to a doctor on the weekend who's probably going to come on an upcoming episode, and he said that one of the biggest issues is that men stop talking. And when you stop talking, you isolate. And when you isolate, you become lonely. And when you become lonely, you can only imagine you become suicidal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe, one of the reasons we started this whole thing is to get men talking with each other and learning how to talk. And I saw an interesting commentary where widowers have a harder time adjusting to being a widower than, say, women with being widows. Women already have this built-in network where they know, hey, I have friends I talk to. Where men, we we do isolate.
Yeah.
And so once we have no one in our partner anymore, since that's usually our only people we talk to, that becomes a very big hole in our life.
And so you think about it, right? Grayson Murray, he wins the Barbasol Championship in 2016. Probably had an amazing youth golf career. Then, like everyone else, you don't win every week. The Scotty Schefflers are a rarity. And then 2024, he wins a playoff for the Sony Open. And that's a big deal because that gets him into the Masters. It gets him into all the majors. It secures his tour card for several years. The guy's basically set. Probably won a couple of $1 million for winning the tournament as well. So it obviously isn't money because, there's no stories out there that he had a gambling problem and gambled it all away and, was in that situation. So it wasn't money as well. And so it's obviously extremely complex. But I think there's got to be corollaries within people who do that. And a lot of it's got to be that loneliness and isolation.
Well, to be a professional athlete, I think we were talking about this earlier, to be that good at anything, it requires lots of dedication, and it doesn't leave a lot of time to make friends.
Not at all. Yeah.
You're out there practicing every day, when everyone else is going to the bar to have a drink and socialize, you're out there working out or perfecting whatever your sport is.
Right.
You are listening to Bonded Voices. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcast service or on the web at www.bondedvoices.com. Thank you to all our sponsors, and now back to the show.
So there's a lot of athletes that have, this, when we were talking about this, it reminded me of a UFC fighter that was very successful, early 2000s, Matt Hughes. Once he started losing, he's like, I'm done. And he attempted suicide. He survived it. I don't want to go into the details of it, but he survived. And now he's an advocate of getting out there and talking to people and reaching out to your community.
Right.
So it makes me wonder how many people, who did Grayson confide in? Who were his advocates? I'd heard that he'd recently engaged. I don't have any details to validate or dismiss that. But it makes you think, who's there to help you celebrate the ups and keep you from getting too far down in the lows?
So I said earlier, I know about 7 people have committed suicide. The house we live in, the reason we live in it is because they had a cabin up in Prescott. The family, the wife and the girls and the father headed up to Prescott. They got up there. He said, I'm heading into this room. Went in there and pulled the trigger. And you sit there going, what? How on earth do you do that? And so you could probably be lonely in the midst of a family. Because he had his family around him.
Well, just like I was mentioning with the widowers, you men in your family unit, we're not really allowed to say everything that we're feeling. We're meant to be the rock a lot of times, and we don't want to be vulnerable and say the things that are wrong. So I can see that real easy, being, the head of a household and something's going wrong and you don't want to let the family down, and that's the way you find your solution. I don't think it's the right solution, but
see, because you hear a lot about it, Loren, when you hear, especially in Japan and things during the financial crisis, it was the shame aspect, right? Mm-hmm. And so they'd commit suicide because they felt shamed and a failure. I wonder if that's a big part of it, because the more I look into it, the more I just think it's complex. But I don't think we can just leave it alone and say it's complex, because otherwise you just accept the number.
Right.
That happens each year without trying to fix it. And, to our point, I think that the Bonded Voices podcast gives people the chance to chat, to join in. And look, if you're at home listening and you're just talking to the radio or talking to your phone or talking to however you listen to the podcast, then great. Write down your own opinions, engage with us. We want to hear from you. Then find friends, get together with them. But I think one thing I did hear about the gentleman that shot himself was that he was very much like he would go out in the garden and do things on his own. So he tried to find ways to constantly get away. So I wonder if that was his ultimate, no, really, I'm going to just get away. And that was the easiest out.
Wow. It's a fascinating, because golf can be a very peaceful game.
Yes.
Specifically if you walk the course.
Which they do.
But I'm thinking, even, let's say when he early on loved golf, didn't have all the fans around, didn't have all the excitement, and he's playing some local little municipal course and walking it, it's a peaceful experience. Yeah. And a way to get away, but ultimately might have led him right into the limelight, which sounds like maybe that might have been an issue. Which I don't have a solution for that.
He was a known golfer to golfers. Like the tournament he won, didn't put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated or in that where he couldn't walk down the street. Most people wouldn't know who he was. That's the thing about golf. Most of the time, if they take their hat off, you wouldn't know who they are.
Sure.
Or if they weren't in that context of being in and around a golf tournament, you probably wouldn't know who those people were. Like we go to the Phoenix Waste Management tournament, and people go, "Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" I'm like, "Well, you won 3 majors and 50 events, but and you watch golf and you still don't know who it is."
Right.
So it can be. So I don't think there was a limelight issue with him where he felt badgered or anything like that. But then again, I obviously don't know it. The backstory of in and around the PGA Tour, the commitments, the sponsors, all the other things that he actually did as well.
Sure. I was listening to a conversation today, and they were talking about how men specifically need work, companionship, and a level of satisfaction of accomplishing something. And so if we agree that those three are somewhat important to a decent percentage of men, and him not making the cut this week, if that was, well, I'm out of work. Granted, we all know while you're on the tour, you might be out of work, but it's for a few days until...
It's a couple of days off, basically.
Right,
you know?
Right. And someone might purposely withdraw if they're not doing well so that they can get a little rest and relaxation and be ready to go.
Yeah, that happens.
In the next town.
Yeah.
But the idea of if we go more widespread, that a professional golfer and the person that lives next door or the guy down the street, when you start thinking about those stories of, it leads back to one of our key focuses with doing this podcast is trying to help men connect with other men and start conversations. And we even talked about the significance of a simple hello in one of our early podcasts, and striking up a conversation with someone in the grocery store checkout line, or while you're fueling up your vehicle, or whatever it might be. A simple smile to someone else might make somebody's day, might make a difference, and it could change your life.
Yeah, because it makes people feel human.
Right.
Yeah, it definitely makes an impact in people's lives. You know, just a simple hello. You know, I think that was one of our episodes. You know, going back to just the everyday people in the veteran community, it's 22 vets commit suicide a day. And so I don't know what it is about with other veterans, we just don't feel like we can talk to people. So I have a couple vet buddies that tend to be more lonerish. I try to get them out to do stuff. So, you know, I like hiking. So I always try to bring them out hiking. And, you know, I've seen just reaching out to them has made a big impact in the way they perceive things. And we've become pretty good friends now from just doing stuff like that, which, you know, 2 years ago or a year ago, I've been around this person for a long time, but just reaching out saying, hey, how you doing? Saying hello. It's actually improved my life, and it hopefully improved his life as well.
Yeah, it's so... I would ask, so Ian mentioned earlier, hey, connect with us. We'd love to have a conversation with you. I would ask to connect on our website of if you've got a successful story of you've changed someone's life or you were impactful.
I'd love to hear that.
And someone said, you know what, if you didn't call me, I was ready to take matters into my own hand. Because it's something that it's not going away. And it's something that we need to spend more time focusing on, how we can reach out and help others.
Or if you need someone to talk to, reach out. Well, you know what? If someone's out there needing someone to talk to, hey, we can help. We'll put you in contact, or we'll find a way for you to talk to us directly.
So 2022, the latest full stats from the CDC, about 49,000 Americans committed suicide. Out of that, men with basically 4 men for every 1 woman committed suicide. And men accounted for basically 70% of all deaths through suicide there. And this is sort of amazed me because you think of ways people, firearms only accounted for just over 50% of that. So, you know, when people talk about, you know, get the guns out, you lower suicide rates, you would, but people will also find other ways to kill themselves, which is horrific. That people would go to that length, but that also points to what's going on internally that you would go to such lengths. Like I remember when I first did my first trip to New Zealand, there was a family I was staying with there, and they said, I met this guy, and then like a week later, they said he boarded up his garage. He had an old car. He sat in the driver's seat and turned the ignition on and just sat there until he passed out from carbon monoxide poisoning. But he went to a lot of efforts to seal everything up and do it that way. He didn't have any no terminal disease, nothing. He was just depressed. And I remember distinctly at the time everyone saying, no one thought he was sad, no one thought he was suicidal, no one thought he was this, no one thought he was that, which makes me think how friends have got to make an effort to check in on their friends.
Well, did he have friends, or were these just superficial? Oh, I just see them, I don't wave to my neighbors, I just see them going to their house type of thing.
Right.
You know, maybe it requires us all being better stewards of our own community.
Well, in this situation, the family I was staying with, the father and him hiked. And that was what was so devastating for the guy about it, is because they would talk on hikes. Mm-hmm. And I remember him saying, he goes, never saw that coming.
So you had met the gentleman that took his own life?
When I first got to New Zealand, yeah.
And while you were there, he took his life.
Yeah,
shortly
a week later.
After. Oh
yeah.
My gosh! Wow.
No, it's stunning. And you know, as I say, I've had 7 that I've known, and every time I just think to myself that the devastation that people leave is pretty amazing. And one thing in the Grayson Murray story that annoyed me actually was, and this is no disrespect to his parents and to anyone else, because people do this to feel a sense of calm or whatever it is, but they said at least now he's resting peacefully. And if you think about it, the Catholic Church has always had an edict that if you commit suicide, you go to hell, right? Because God creates you and you don't have the right to take your own life. And I just thought to myself, the more that people use those sort of platitudes for people who've committed suicide, I think it encourages more people to do the same thing. That, hey, at least I can now be at peace. And for me, I don't think you're at peace, because it's a trail of devastation you leave.
Well, yeah, it's such a final act, and you may not experience it ever again because of the act, but everyone around you, it leaves a hole.
A huge one. And like you were saying earlier about parents not staying together when their kids commit suicide, because it's left such a devastating effect on people.
Well, and that's not even just suicide. That's if there's a loss of a child,
right?
Then it's very unlikely that married couple will stay married.
And probably more so, I think, with a suicide, because then the questions be, what did we do wrong?
Right.
You know, there's one thing to lose a child in a car accident and have to deal with that, but the other side of, like, you know, a child commits suicide, why? Because remember, it leaves so many unanswered questions. Mm-hmm. You know, a couple of our baseball dads who did, we spent weeks trying to figure out, why the hell would he do that? Mm-hmm. Why would he do that to his kids? You know, why would he do that to his wife? His parents?
Right.
You know, all that side of things. So, you know, I used to think it was, I'm saying the word callous, that the Catholic Church would say you go to hell if you commit suicide. But the more I thought about it, I thought, well, it's true. If you make it sound like you go to a good place by taking your own life, it'll just encourage more people to do the same thing.
It would. I just think of, if we follow down that path of the Catholic Church and the belief that if you take your own life, that you go to hell, and if the statement of they're in a happier place now, you could almost use the opposite argument for someone to say, well, maybe I shouldn't commit suicide, because if I do, according to the Catholic faith, it's eternity in hell.
Right.
And so I'm not sure how concerned someone is when they're at that point of suicide.
Yeah, I don't think they're thinking of much beyond the actual next 5 seconds.
Right. So it's yet another great question for us to ponder after someone passes away.
So takeaways. It's tough with this, other than condolences to obviously Grayson Murray's family, and if you're out there contemplating suicide, get help. Like, I mean, you don't know what life is going to deal you in the next year, 5 years. Loren, you were talking earlier today about how we live in such a world where we were a bit warm, so we turned the air conditioner on. We have so many home comforts and just things to make life easy. Get help. Find people to talk to. Just put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. Go and talk to people on the street that you wouldn't normally talk to.
Yeah, there's two aspects to this. There's the individual that's thinking about suicide. Definitely reach out to anybody to talk to. You'll hopefully find out when you reach out to some other people that you may have things in common that you will be able to talk about and keep going. But from the standpoint of just the everyday person, reach out to more people. Start talking to more people. Be engaged in other people's lives.
Yeah.
And actually, when you're having a conversation, be engaged in that conversation. Look for clues. Talk to your kids about things that you maybe, have them worried or concerned that, their life's over, whatever it is. But it all revolves around getting out there and talking to people. You can't do it in a vacuum.
Right.
What about advice for parents?
Post-suicide advice?
Let's look at this from a pre-situation, right? If you've got kids who are like, what do you look out for? Like, I know a lot of people say, don't let your kids isolate in their room. But, and I've seen one of our friends on the weekend whose kid graduated. He said we make the kids play video games out here, so they just lock their room and that, because I admit that you can go in dark places as a teenager, going through puberty, through all the stuff that kids go through with friends and not friends and girlfriends and boyfriends and all that, and then to lock yourself in a room.
Well, I think so. What we've done in our own house, we have one television. That's it in the whole house. And so if somebody wants to play video games, great. They're playing video games right out in the front room.
Right.
And so I think that there is, the more comfortable you make the bedroom, the more argument the child has to hang out in the bedroom. And we've also, the three of us sitting around the table right now, we've pushed all of our kids to participate in extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
And get out, get to meet other people, whether it's, for some of us it's sports, for some of us it might be chess, it might be drama, it might be whatever it is. Motivate the kids to get involved with the social studies club at the school, with the history club, with the physics club, whatever it might be, because there are others that are motivating their kids to do the same, to participate in that club, and building that connection with some common interests is what really opens the doors.
Yeah. So I'd also say, don't be a helicopter parent, because I think the more you are present in your child's life and overbearingly present, when you pull away or they have issues that they don't want you engaged in, now they're more lonely. So the more, I think the more you can follow a guide of making sure you've got that structure around you, people to lean on, let your friends have their friends that may not be the greatest friends for them to have, but at least having other people that they can talk to, outlets to chat. Because the one thing, going back to what that doctor said, they don't talk.
I think being a good example for your kids, showing your kids that, like for our group, our kids all know that we meet for coffee and have our conversations, and hopefully the kids are still listening to the podcast, they say they are, but they know that we're out there engaging with our friends and talking. We don't, if anyone listens to these podcasts, we've, had a few episodes where we feel like we're on the couch. We expose ourselves to our friends and get feedback.
Right.
Hopefully this is a something that our kids can learn from. Maybe they might not like take notes on this, but maybe they absorb a little bit of what we're doing, and so that in their journey through adulthood, they pick up a few things.
Oh, I think they are. I think they are so amazingly perceptive, even when we think they're ignoring us.
So, our thoughts and prayers to Grayson Murray's family and to anyone out there who has lost someone in and around their lives to suicide. But don't let it be an end point. Let it be a moment where you can use experiences to stop the next person from engaging in that. So until next time, I'm Ian.
I'm Greg.
This is Loren.
And from a somber, bonded voices, we'll see you again next time.